Could I welcome you to the refugee and tourism session? Crista's going to start off.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Welcome everyone. I was really pleased to see I think it was a unique session that we just came out of. Climate change, positive perspectives, smiles, positive attitudes. It's fantastic. And I don't know how many of you were at the opening ceremony this morning, but there were two very important messages that were highlighted. One, we all know responsible tourism meant making better places for people to live in and better places for people to visit. But the key message from the Secretary General of the United Nations World Tourism Organization was one of tolerance and understanding. So I think for this particular session, talking about the refugee crisis, it's the perfect setting. So this is the first ever conversation that we're having at WTM for the responsible tourism agenda on the refugee crisis. And we want to spend the next 45 minutes or so just diving into this topic. We've had climate change just now, and we've spoken about climate change for many years now. And yesterday, some of you attended perhaps the session on Brexit. So we're not scared of looking at big topics and looking at ways to really build resilience in our industry. But we're now facing a growing refugee crisis. We have 65 million people currently displaced in the world, more than we did after World War II. So 6% of that huge figure, 65 million, are in Europe. And our industry, our travel industry, and all sectors actually are facing the ramifications of this conflict. And what I'd like to explore for the next 45 minutes or so is the impact of the refugee crisis on our tourism industry, and explore how and why should the tourism industry help with this crisis. Over the past 2 years, we've become more and more aware of the crisis as it has entered Europe. All of us, tourism producers and consumers, are observing how this system is growing, and we're analyzing how it will shape our personal futures and our industry. I'd like this session to be an opportunity to explore different perspectives, which is why we have a number of co-hosts with us that will share their experiences and their opinions. We want all of you to participate, so please join in the conversation. I know we have several people in the audience here that have experience in this area, so please join. I'd very much like this to be a learning session. I look forward to exploring this topic with you. Just a small disclaimer that this session is being recorded, so if you're putting your hand up, just bear your mind that you will be on camera. My name is Crista Buznea. I'm one of Harold's students and tourists for the Responsible Tourism Master's degree. I'm a marketing manager at Holiday Extras, and I've recently launched a responsible tourism business called Future Forward Travel, focusing on how we can better communicate responsible tourism. I was inspired actually by Ruby, who is with us today, to visit Calais a few months ago, and so this journey began. I'm very excited to have these great co-hosts with me today. So I would like to start the session by kind of deep diving into Turkey, where we've seen over the past couple of years an influx of people with over 2.5 million refugees now living in Turkey. And we have Arzu, who will have a brief introduction about herself and how she perceives the crisis has affected the tourism industry in Turkey.
Thank you. My name is Arzu Özenen. I'm coming from Turkey. I'm the chairperson for an association for responsible tourism called Yeşil Valiz. We have now more than 3.5 million refugees living in Turkey, not in the camps, because we have the camps only for 250,000 refugees, and other than the camps, we have lots of refugees living all around Turkey. Looking at the refugee problem perceived by European countries, and it's quite different. It's like comparing a mouse with an elephant, in fact, because European countries, they are outsourcing the problem to Turkey. That's the thing they are doing. I'm sorry if I'm so direct, but they are just having some selected, relatively educated refugees into their camps, and for the others, and in a lot of projects, I think it's very important to express the right message, and they do not. And they are just easing their consciences. I know a lot of people working for the refugees, and I respect every one of them, but I don't think it's quite like the volunteerism thing. I don't think a lot of things are being done responsibly. Today, I think we will see some videos, and after the videos, I would like to comment some more about the projects. I think it would be better that way. But I have to say that it's not the same thing when you are having 5,000 or 6,000 refugees in one of your countries. It would only add to your diversity. It will make a good, nice neighborhood of Syrians, for example, with good Syrian restaurants. It would only add the diversity of London, for example. But in Turkey, there are 2.5 million registered refugees, more than 3 million refugees right now. And the government is considering giving them constant citizenships. That would mean a demographic change. That would mean to change the sense of place in a lot of cities. And you can guess, all of you can guess, what would it mean for the tourism sector. We had a terrible tourism season this year, but not only because of the refugees. We had lots of problems. We have our hands full. Only the refugee crisis is only one of them. But I have to say that refugees are living in Turkey quite like one of us. Only we do not want, as a Turkish citizen, I'm very proud that we didn't discriminate any of the refugees. We had an open door policy, and we took all the refugees in. And there may be some human rights problems, but no more than the Turkish citizens in Turkey, I'm sorry. And also, with the refugee problem, I believe that we should concentrate on post-war solutions, not the current solutions. We have to deal with everything. We have to deal with their treatment, their well-being, their humane living conditions. But also, we would have to think, when thinking of projects, we would have to think that they need to go back to their countries, not the other way. They had to go back to their countries to live good lives when the war ends. If we keep our minds into that point, I think we would have more solutions, more innovative solutions. Is it okay if I go on after the presentations? Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that detailed analysis and overview of what's happening in Turkey. We will come back to diving even more into that in a few minutes. We have with us here as well Ruby. Ruby is a young pioneer in the industry, I will call her. She has some experience from Lesbos and Thessaloniki as well, and she's connected with the Coast Cornwall Sustainable Tourism Project as well. So I would very much like to hand over to Ruby to talk us through her experience on those islands and how the tourism industry was affected by that over there.
Thank you. So a year ago, I decided to go to Spain for 3 months to au pair, but after a week, I decided that teaching privileged Spanish children English for a few hours a day wasn't quite doing it. So I met up with a friend of a friend, and we went over to Lesbos for 3 months. Where we were probably some of the first volunteers on the island. There was no organisations or anything, and we spent 3 months there, and we were getting people off the boats when they came over from Turkey. We were building shelters, we were doing crowd control, food, getting dry clothes on the wet people. And then a few months ago, after travelling elsewhere, I decided I wanted to go back to Greece. And at this time I went to Thessaloniki, which is mainland Greece. And I was on the camps for 7 weeks. There I was with an organisation because the camps are military run now, so you can't get in as an independent volunteer and do much help. So I was there for 6 or 7 weeks, and we were doing lots of distributions and identifying vulnerable cases and such. When it comes to the tourism industry, on Lesvos, after I left really, there were quite a few Greek people, locals, who opened up their hotels or their houses to the refugees for free and fed them and housed them for however long it took them to leave the island and continue their journey to Athens. So there's a really, really positive movement on the island, and the people of Lesvos have been really amazing. In Thessaloniki, I didn't have such a close experience with the tourism there because the camp was quite outside of the city. But when we were identifying the vulnerable cases in the camp, we were trying to get the UN and the other organisations to put them into hotels while the relocation process to Europe started, because the camps are not okay places to be for anybody, but particularly for pregnant women, young children, people with disabilities. So a lot of the hotels are being filled with people that we identified as vulnerable. So I think that made quite a big difference to the industry in Thessaloniki.
I think it would be very interesting for you, Ruby, to talk a little bit about the A Million Acts of Sanctuary project that has been going on in Cornwall. We're talking here about a very small community that really came together and problem solved and got together and really tried to solve problems together and come up with that unique ideas, exactly what Arzu was talking about, to actually build resilience and really truly help the crisis. Can you tell us a bit more about that, please?
So the Million Acts of Sanctuary was actually set up by my mum, and she decided to set it up when I was on Lesvos, and I was telling her about all of these stories, these crazy stories, and also after I told my best friend about what was going on, and she decided to set up an exhibition by the students of Falmouth to raise money, and she actually raised £3,000 for me to be able to spend in Lesvos. So after that, my mum decided to set up a day where all of the people, because there are a lot of people in Cornwall who are interested in helping, bring them all together and try and make everything a little bit more efficient and see if we can join together and do more good. So she did this day in March, and it was really I wasn't there, but the videos, and it was really amazing, and there was all sorts of people there. There were support groups from Cornwall, support groups from London, the local council was there were students, there were school children, there were business people, and it was a really amazing day, and from that came a much better sense of community when it came to helping the refugees. And now, for example, Cornwall have arranged lots of van loads to be going out to Syria quite often. And so filling these trucks, getting the donations, sending it out there has become much easier now that everyone knows what everyone else is doing. There's been more events run by the students of Falmouth University after this day. The council have changed their view a little bit on the refugees coming to Cornwall, and there's been lots of help making the Syrian families that have arrived in Cornwall much more welcome.
I have to admit that I actually saw the A Million Acts of Sanctuary video and everything that Ruby's been talking about, and I was inspired to then go to Calais and volunteer for a weekend because I realized that I lived 30 miles away from a refugee camp, and I was studying and investigating just as you are here today, this crisis and how it will affect us. And then I realized, how do I get my information if I'm not there? And I'm 30 miles away from a refugee camp. So I think we've had some fantastic examples of how just a small community that was Ruby going to have an experience, and then a whole community being mobilized afterwards to create change. That is fantastic. And what we've seen some examples as well. This is what Arzu was alluding to earlier. We've seen a lot of movements, especially in Germany, in integrating refugees into the tourism industry as tour guides, as just in museums as well, showcasing various different artifacts, people that have specific Arabic language skills, bringing them into museums and into different areas where they can support. And Travendi created a great infographic a while ago on ideas on how tourism can support refugees, be it with accommodation and meeting spaces like Ruby said earlier, or through creating a community spirit, tours, just showcasing the different mixes of cultures within a community, rethinking our museums as integration hubs, looking at dining clubs, repurposing what we can, and then airlines can do a lot to help as well. So I think this gives us a really good basis now to ask ourselves a couple of questions in terms of what is it that we can do to help? How do we observe this crisis evolving in the next few years, and where do we go from here? I mean, we've just come out of a session about climate change, and I think it'll be really interesting. We should discuss the impact of climate change and climate change refugees, which is a whole a different story that we should unveil. So I'd very much like to hear some thoughts from John as well, and then hopefully we can open up the floor because I really want you to come to us with a lot of information, and we wanna talk about this together so we can make sense of it together. Thank you.
My name is Kelsey. I just wanted to say that I've got a really good friend. I met him here in London, and he has just cycled 2,000 miles from Canada down to Tijuana, Mexico. And it's something he organized on his own. He called it the refugee cycle ride, basically, and he raised money in order to do that. And it's something that as he was going down, the whole point of it was to talk about how it's normal. Human migration is normal. People moving from one place to another is part of our lives. And as he was cycling down the coast, he held discussions with people over tea, because it's an easy way to bring people around. And from that, I mean, that's something that he did, but it's quite inspiring for me because it's such a simple concept, just going somewhere and hosting get-togethers and having tea and speaking with people. But I just think that, you just need to go out and just do something. It's like what you said when you went to the refugee camp that was only 30 miles away. Like, all it takes is just making a decision and going out and doing it. So that's something that I'm applying to my own life, and I just wanted to share that.
Thank you very much indeed. It also raises the issue, doesn't it, that sustainable tourism, responsible tourism is about individuals doing exactly that, is taking their own responsibility and doing what they can do, not waiting for somebody else to do something on their behalf. So I think we'd applaud you for that, and I'd ask if anybody on the panel would like to make a response to you. Or if we just want to invite somebody else.
I have a question. So I'm really keen on the back of what you've said, Arzu, and the perspective that you've had. What do you think are the next steps in Turkey, and how do you think what can we do to help with the situation over there?
Thank you. For the European Union, maybe they can give the money first. They do not. That's the thing. I appreciate all the attempts to do everything. It's very important. For example, Manda's project, I wouldn't expect less of her. I think it's wonderful because it's creating an opportunity for the community to come together. I think it's wonderful to be able to understand this. But this is basically doing something for the community itself. And for the refugees, yes, every bit helps, every money, everything. And especially the thing that international community is thinking about them. They are thinking about them. But you know, the problem is maybe I cannot keep it. I will say it before the videos. I don't think we should do it so dramatic in videos. So much. We will see it. I think we should show all the sides, all the thoughts, and everything. And they should be objective. They shouldn't be chic. The situation is not chic. The situation is terrible. And the videos and everything, I know NGO sector is a sector. And it has to be fed. But this is where irresponsible actions and irresponsible campaigning begins. I think it's very important that we are very thoughtful about the images, the things, the thoughts we express. And for example, migration is normal. Yeah, migration is normal. I think it's good. It's a wonderful project, though. But this is not a normal migration. And this certainly is not the same size in Canada as it is in Turkey. Yeah, certainly it's not. I know migration is normal, and I hope not, but we will see some more migration due to climate change and everything in coming years, and that's why these community exercises are very important for resilience. I think that's an opportunity for it. But for the refugees, we have to understand that is their country, Syria, and we have to concentrate on stopping war. We cannot stop war, but we have to talk peace first. Not the things after doing it, but the post-war. I think it's very hopeful to talk about post-war, post-conflict. It's very hopeful for them. It's very hopeful for the communities. I think we have to talk like that. But I will keep the others after the videos.
Not at all.
Hi, I'm Janie from Unseen Tours, and we're a company based in London and work with homeless people to lead walking tours around London. And I was wondering if you had any good examples of refugee-led tours happening around the world, whether you think there is a demand for this, and whether people can help set these up, if you have any.
But this is where I think we will go back to Arzu, because I think it's really important for her to finish her point. I've seen a couple of examples in the media circulated by UNHCR of how they integrated refugees and they were presenting tours in museums using refugees. So I've seen a few examples, albeit I think warped from the media, as Arzu is about to talk more about.
I will have to talk about the video. It will spoil all of it. Yeah, it will. Yeah, you know, there's a video about Berlin. I had the privilege to see it before because I was a panelist. I don't think much of this video because of the message it's expressing. In fact, yeah, they have trained some of the refugees to make guided tours to Pergamon Museum. Yeah, Pergamon Museum is, you know, full of stolen marbles from Turkey. Yeah, and it seems that they also have stolen artifacts from Syria. And now they are training an artist from Syria, refugee, to make the guided tour in Pergamon Museum. And the refugee, I will tell all of the video, I'm sorry. And the refugee is, I'm sorry. And the refugee is telling that I'm so happy the Syrian artifacts are here, far away from war. And I think it's first, there is a discrimination among the refugees. And it's like, she's an art. It's giving me goosebumps. You know, it's like just take the precious artifacts, take the precious people to the capital. It's like Hunger Games, isn't it? Yeah. It's and then in that order. First the precious artifacts and then precious people. And the other is it's not normal. I'm not coming from. I know you are not too. I'm not coming from a culture that we can discriminate people. I'm not sure I can remember correctly, but we have, I would like to say two verses from a poem by Fuzuli. It's like, don't say, I don't even hurt an ant. The ant will be hurt by the word even. That's why we cannot discriminate. We have to help refugees because they are human. Not because they are artists, they have professions, they would look good on the videos. That's not the thing. I think if you have to tell your fellow citizens the importance of the issue, the importance of the refugee crisis, you shouldn't tell them that they are artists, they are teachers, they are precious people. No, they are human. They cannot be something because they are precious because they do something. They are precious because God gave them life. They're precious. I think that's very important. I'm sorry to spoil your video.
Not at all. Not at all. I'm glad you did. Because it brings a very nuanced perspective on what we see as good practice and how we interpret it. I'd like to hear more from the audience if we have some more questions or thoughts or ideas.
Hi. You've spoken a lot about how individuals and communities can do things to help refugees. I just wondered what you thought about how the sector as a whole could support refugees, so tour operators, big hotels and even airlines, what you think they could do to help the refugee crisis?
I might have an answer for that. Last March, I went with a friend to Athens, which is basically the second stop after they come from the islands, and volunteered for a week. And then friends started to hear about it and also wanted to go. So we returned and actually did a series of a few trips that spent mornings volunteering in some of the camps. In Athens, they're there for the most part on short stays because they're heading north and then into the rest of Europe. And then sightseeing in Athens as well. And they were staying in hotels and contributing to the economy as well. So it was a feel-good type of feeling for the person attending, participating in the trip, and but they were doing good. And perhaps the most important thing is they were able to come back at the end of the trip and share that with others. So.
Hi, so just kind of tagging on to that one, if people do want to go and volunteer and do want to help, what would your tips be for making sure they do so in a responsible way?
Hi, really good question, because I think there are a lot of organisations out there who are kind of tied down by their mandates and their restrictions, and that means that not much gets done. So I think look for probably the smaller and independent organisations to volunteer with. It depends where you want to do it. I've only been to Greece, but there are some really good independent organisations in Greece. And yeah, just do lots of research before you go about also what their aims are. Because every organisation has different ideas about what needs to be done. So I think depending on what you're interested in, that's a good point as well.
If I could add to that as well. There will be a session, I think, tomorrow on volunteerism, on responsible volunteerism. And I think a key message to highlight here is it's important for organizations to want to find out what your skills are, to find out what it is you can do to support, because you are coming in contact with vulnerable people that have gone through a lot. So you should be questioned severely on what your skills are, what your background is. I was very, very pleased when I went to Calais that I was given a form, and in our morning briefing we were specifically told that we will not be taken into the camp. We will not be interacting with refugees. We are not allowed to talk to refugees. We are not qualified to do that. If you would have been there for 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, you would have had a different relationship or other credentials or other bases of information to interact with those people. And I was overjoyed that I was seeing that type of reaction in Calais. Because it was what we've been talking about here at WTM for years and years and years. So make sure that people ask for your skills and that you're being asked to do what you're qualified to do. I'd love to hear more thoughts, please. Yep.
I'm so sorry. I didn't answer your question. I was so influenced by the video. I'm so sorry. I hate panelists like that, talking a lot and not replying questions. And it's also a reply to your question too. Refugee-led guiding tours are not a bad idea in general. Yeah, they can be done. That can be done because there will be post-war conditions and there will be tourism to Syria. In fact, Syrian government is now just having a campaign that Syria is beautiful as ever, but no, there will be real tourism after war and they will need jobs. It's good if they can they can go back to their countries empowered, incapacitated. That would be great, and that would be great as a tourism sector if we can do something about it. We can just train them as agencies, as outbound and inbound, and we can train them as guides because there will be a post-war economy, and I think they will make great contribution to the economy. I hope this would be a reply. Thank you.
I come from Sri Lanka. I live here in UK. I know this problem. This is the problem. It's a political problem. This is a political problem. If the Western world or other countries export the weapons, the problem is still there. If you stop the war in Syria or in Egypt, you can get more tourism. The tourist people must use the influence to the politician. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Anne. I wanted to just pick up on what you said. If I heard correctly, we're talking about this video, this Syrian tourism board released. Yes. Is it this video showing just 3 or 4 minutes of coastline? So yes, so I was wondering what was this about, because when I saw this, I thought they're living in a dream or something. So I thought it was actually ridiculous. So do you know what they wanted to, who they wanted to reach with this, or what it was about?
Hi, so I just wanted to pick up on what you were saying about the post-war economy, because when I was in Jordan earlier this year, I went into a bakery and met a man from Damascus who was behind the counter selling baked goods, and I was talking to him, and he had scars on his faces, which obviously he didn't mention, but presumably came from when he was in Syria, and his family used to run a travel agency in Damascus, and they've had to move from Jordan, and they're having to do jobs completely unrelated. And you were talking about how in the post-war economy they will need these skills. How do you expect people like that to be able to go back and return to the tourism industry? In an ideal world, or in a perceived, how could you do that?
Okay, no problem. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was not talking about 2 years later or 3 years later. I was talking about a long, and it's not only all the people will not be in the tourism industry, but as a tourism industry, we can do something that they can just create a tourism industry when the war ends. We have to think that the war will end, the conflict will end. Yeah, it will someday. I hope it will be near. But all the, for example, tourism is something I'm doing out of passion, and I have another company giving consultancy to automotive sector, and we are training people who can go and work as traders or work in the work in the companies who have joint companies in Turkey. Who can go back and work in there, because there is a time these refugees have to learn something, do something, hope something. It's very important. It's not only, we are human beings. We have to eat. We have to sleep. We have to just have a shelter. But more than anything, we have to have hope. Yeah, and I think these kinds of things, without losing reality as the travel board, Syrian travel boards video. I think it's very good for them to have hope for the post-war conflicts. And I think, yes, tourism sector has a lot influence in politics all around the world. We, interestingly, I would like to give the example of Putin, who just use tourism to make Turkey to do anything he wants. Yes, I think that shows something. I'm afraid it's not a very good example, but I think it shows something. Tourism sector and as the big companies in the tourism sector, they have more tourists moving from one place to another, and this is an influence. This is a lobbying opportunity, but do they use them? I think we have to ask it. Do they use them?
Davina Stanford from Leeds Beckett University. With apologies for sort of shifting the conversation away slightly from the refugees into the local communities, the residents of Turkey. Am I correct in thinking that there's been a big impact on those residents and a reduction of tourism? And if so, then my question is, what should the response of the industry be, and how can we help those people?
Thank you. Tourism industry is in Turkey. You know, as I said before, we had a very bad season. And I don't think financially they are in no position to give any help. And also there were another example from Canada, a hotelier who gave 5,000 free nights for the refugees. You know, it's only a drop in Turkey. It's a big problem. But for the refugees, there are a lot of opportunities to work in Turkey. For example, Turkey, in some of the places in Turkey, there is halal tourism, and there are a lot of Arab tourists who are coming to Turkey, and this is a good opportunity for Syrians to work in. These hotels are good opportunities, and they are working in them. They are doing, I think it's very important that they continue their working in this process. I think the camps, for example, in Turkey, I said that we have camps for 250,000 people, but the major, they cannot just accommodate all the refugees, but most of the refugees, they don't want to stay in camps, because if you stay in camps, you cannot work. And they want to work. And that's why they prefer living all around Turkey. But unfortunately, because the government does not have the money to do that. If we have the money, if we have the funding, we can do that, and we have some projects as an association to do that. If they are not trained to work in the tourism sector, they are only perceived as low-rate employees, and this is only exploitation. So this is what we have to do. We have to do as an association, as the whole tourism sector. If we have the niche sector as an halal tourism, as we do, and we have to train them, and we have to make them not only low-rated, lowly paid employees, but wanted employees for all the tourism sector. I think we will do that, but as I said before, although we are trying to do everything to feed and accommodate and make them feel at home, we need a lot more funding to do more for 2.5 million refugees. And I don't know if the funding comes. We have lots of projects on the way. I hope so.
Okay, well, earlier Crista said, will I say a few words at that point? I don't want to do that, or didn't want to do that, but I think now maybe if we bring the whole thing to a conclusion. Huh? Can I follow on as well, first of all, by asking you to thank our panellists, please, and our hosts for today for coming, for contributing, and for sharing their ideas and experiences with you all. So thank you very much indeed. Crista also took away my second comment, which was going to be, if anybody's here tomorrow, We obviously have the volunteering discussion tomorrow. And it's really interesting is the approach we've taken today is a very positive one about volunteering. I think tomorrow we're going to look at the other side of the coin, the irresponsible side of volunteering. And for example, many of you will know the problem that, for example, orphanage tourism has caused in terms of not enough checking of people. So you've had paedophiles actually going to work on orphanage projects because they were foreign, they must be okay. So we're going to look at those issues tomorrow. I think the third thing that always concerns me about any migration, whether it's forced migration or whether it's a voluntary migration, is it tends to take away the young people, the dynamic people, and then you think what's going to happen after the peace. If those people don't go back, what's the future for a country where some of its most resilient, most motivated young people have been lost? And the last thing I think, which is really important why we need to solve these issues as a society, as politically as well as in any other sense, is that I remember being a tourism advisor for the Palestinian Authority and visiting refugee camps where we now were in the third generation of people living in them. So they're not refugee camps in terms of temporary anymore, they're people's homes where they're born, live and die. Let's hope that doesn't happen here, in this case and so on, because that will be an absolute disaster. So thank you very much for your time, for your participation. Thank you again to our hosts, and we wish you a wonderful World Travel Market Day. Thank you.
If you go back to the roots, the Latin compati, it means with suffering. It means with suffering. And so when we truly offer compassion to one another, it's to share in their suffering. And so today, I hope that we find together new ways in which we can come alongside these people and share in their suffering and show true compassion.
If we don't acknowledge it and engage with it, if we don't digest it digestible, then it will carry on being like this. This is the worst refugee crisis of World War II. On our watch, in our space.
And it's so easy to feel helpless. And the idea of having hope is such a strong thing, and it's wonderful to be here as well.
I didn't know where to start and who to help or where to help. So it was one phone call in particular that I got off the phone to Ruby that I thought I really need to do something now, and we all need to do something to help. So I thought, well, we haven't really got any money, and I don't really know what to do by myself, but then on my course at Falmouth, there's 150 people who really want to help as well. So I put forward the idea of maybe doing an exhibition where we all donated artwork. Sometimes it's just too overwhelming to know where to start, so I think it was a good thing that we all came together.
I think today was an important event because there was a lot of people and individuals and groups who are working towards helping refugees. And it's very good to unite all these efforts. At the same time, it's a good eye-opening because everyone tells about what's happening in their major, and the other people would know and realize that there is missing a need here or something, or people wanted to get involved. I'm hoping that more people get involved as they attend this event, and I think it's happening already. A lot of people started to ask, how can we get involved, how can we help more, which is really good.
The event today, I think, has been wonderful. I mean, it's been wonderful in that it felt as though I was amongst people that I'd met on the walk. All those amazing people that you come across that are doing these incredibly difficult things, either with refugees that are currently walking through, or particularly even in Israel and Palestine, where there's just constant problems. And the event today just highlighted the importance of each person being suggested that you can do something. Anyone can do something, whatever it is.
I was really moved and encouraged by some of the sharing and presentation of a couple of the organizations that have been present here, but also individually the ones that I've spoken to. They seem to be very conscious and very aware of what has been happening, and that we need to respond. We are no longer in a position of saying, right, okay, this is not something for us to deal with. And I saw that there's a real commitment of wanting to do something about it beyond just the talking. And I think the testimonies that came up from various people was quite strong and moving. And if Cornwall is to receive more refugees in the future, I think it's people like the ones that we had today to actually support them and accommodating them in integrating into the Cornish sort of community.
It was hard to sort of think of what to do, and today's helped me to realise that there are loads of ways that I can help without going out to Lesbos or Calais, but I can help from here, and simple things like collecting clothing or setting up events or just anything really simple. What Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world, and you can make a difference, whatever it is. You can, even if it's just something little, you can make a massive difference in the world.
We have the chance to turn the pages over. We can write what we want to write. We gotta make ends meet before we get much older. We're all someone's daughter. We're all someone's son. Someone's son. Can we look at each other down the barrel of a gun? Try and understand it, make a noise and make it clear. Whoa, whoa, whoa. We're not gonna sit in silence. We're not gonna live with fear.
The war destroyed building our life and separated families and people. The war also destroyed our heritage, our history. Everybody around the world just speak about the war. No one tried to remind people what Syria was. I'm Kifah Alidi from Syria. I'm in Berlin since 1 year and 9 months, and I am artist and writer. In the museum Ancient Near East where I'm working, there's many objects from Syria. At least this object here saved like the war will not destroy it, and like all people from around the world like can come and know more about our heritage and our history. You can touch this feeling, how much they miss their home and how much it's important for them to see this object. This country didn't just open camps for them, they opened museums. All countries who have refugees or newcoming people should do the same. It's help, really help. Help for newcoming people and help for the new society. Germans have very amazing experience because they just rebuilt this country after the war, and this country was destroyed. This city, like Berlin, was just on the ground, and look how's Berlin now. Of course, we can rebuild our country after the war.
We take a selfie together, Hassan, because we're going to show the people that we love each other.
Ik kom uit het zuiden van Nederland en waar kom jij vandaan?
I am من سوريا.
You came from Turkey with a boat.
With a boat, yeah.
Do you want to explain me why you came here?
الحقيقة أنا من الناس اللي تعرضوا للموت في سوريا 3 مرات. I'm a tourist, and in 3 days we fly back to Germany.
إن شاء الله نجتمع هناك.
What's your favourite movie? The Hobbit.
وأنت شو بتتمنى إن شاء الله؟
Ik ga morgen in het zwembad liggen. Een beetje bruin worden, net zoals jij.
Word jij ook uitgehuwelijkt of mag jij zelf je partner kiezen?
متى كانت أجمل لحظة في حياتك؟
het mooiste moment van mijn leven.
شو بكون موقفه إذا كان في له جار نازح سوري؟